Hi, I'm Brett Stafford, and welcome to another edition of Red Watch on GFN.TV. Being a tobacco harm reduction advocate is not for the faint of heart. Day in and day out, you're hit with an onslaught of media scare tactics claiming that vaping is worse than smoking. You witness soul-crushing stories of vape shop owners barely holding on, businesses that exist solely to help smokers quit, now struggling against impossible odds. And you battle the overwhelming urge to shut down the voices online pushing the anti-vaping narrative. So how do you fight back and stay sane? Joining us today is someone uniquely equipped to answer that question, Skip Murray, a dedicated tobacco harm reduction advocate, writer, and former vape shop owner. She's seen it all, from helping smokers to quit to counseling business owners facing ruin, all while championing a simple but powerful idea, #Be Kind. But can kindness survive in a war of misinformation? Let's find out. Skip, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I can't believe it's taken us this long to sit down. I know. First, let me ask you, how frustrating is it to be a tobacco harm reduction advocate, and why?
At times, it's very frustrating. I mean, there are rewards every time you help somebody, every time you defeat legislation that would harm people. But most of the time, it's frustrating. There's a lot of misinformation. You spend a lot of time trying to correct the misinformation, and that's time that could be spent helping people quit smoking.
Before we dive deeper, please share with our viewers where you're from and why you became an advocate for vaping.
I'm currently in Brainerd, Minnesota, and I started smoking in 1969 when I was 10 and failed many times to quit smoking. And in 2014, my 29-year-old son had a heart attack and almost died. And we watched the helicopter airlift him away, and my little granddaughter, who was a kindergartner, waved at the helicopter and said, "Goodbye, Daddy. I love you. Please don't die. Please come home." And my son did survive, and he opened a vape shop. And it, from that point on, became my mission to never see another little girl begging her dad not to die.
Oh, that's amazing. So, and then you ended up joining the vape shop as an employee or a helper?
Yeah, I didn't get paid. I was just mom helping out. I worked nights at a group home, and my son was a single dad. So it just kind of worked out between the two of us to, take care of my granddaughter and take care of the vape shop. So
But you were still a smoker at the time.
I had tried for many years to quit smoking and just failed over and over. Or I'd quit for a little while and then go back to it. So I flat out gave up. And then my son started complaining because I would sneak out the back door and have a cigarette. And Mom, you smell like cigarettes. You can't smoke here. So he gave me my first vape and I went, fine. And I vaped when I couldn't smoke. And somehow, over 4 or 5 months, I accidentally quit smoking. It was amazing.
So what was it like then in Minnesota in those first 5, 10 years? Was it a movement, with trying to convert smokers? And how might it have changed?
Oh, it was wonderful back then. There were so many vape shops all over the United States, and it just became like its own community. Most vape shops had a lounge. We had a big sectional couch, and people would come in every day. Somebody came in that wanted to quit smoking, and they'd hang out and they'd help each other. And as more misinformation happened and regulations came about, it just dwindled. And we really, as the shops started closing, we kind of lost that community thing. It was fun in the old days. People from all walks of life, there'd be some 70-year-old guy and some 25-year-old guy, and they would just hang out and talk.
So is the shop still open?
No, I closed 3 years ago.
And what was that like?
One of the worst days of my life, to be honest. Towards the end, there was just hardly anybody coming in to quit smoking anymore. Uh, People used to believe it was helpful, and now so many of them believe it's harmful. And I stayed open way longer than I should have. I was using my own money to keep it open, and um, I was devastated. To give up helping people, even if you were helping less people, when that's the whole reason you're doing what you're doing, was just devastating. Is the only word I can think of.
When you think of the messaging from tobacco control, at least for those that are so clearly anti vaping, do you feel like they've stolen something from you?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I've never looked at it that way. But yes, in a way it does feel. I've always done volunteer work. That's my thing. I like helping people. And it's been very hard on my mental health to lose that and transition to doing something else to still be helping people who smoke. So, yes, it actually does feel like I've been robbed.
And you mentioned mental health. That is one of the messages you bring to your advocacy around autism and neurodiversity. Why don't you talk about that a bit?
It was during the COVID lockdowns where we really isolated. In Minnesota, vape shops couldn't be open for many weeks. Um, we had to change how we do everything at my job at the group home. My husband has COPD. COVID could have killed him. So he quit going anywhere. He just stayed home. He stayed home for a couple of years. And I got very depressed and didn't realize how depressed I was until a friend pointed it out to me. And I went and sought help. I uh, was moving towards ending my life. And I got diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And a few months later, I got diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And as I researched nicotine and smoking and how to help people, people like me are the people who smoke the most. So you really can't separate one from the other. You've got to reach out to the people that need you the most. So I have been very, very open. At first I didn't tell anybody. Um, but now I'm quite open and write quite often about my mental health and about smoking.
Let me ask you, Skip, during the time, let's just go before the shop closed, during, say, the heyday of vaping and advocacy, what was the media coverage like on vaping back then? And has it changed? And if so, how?
There has always been some negative coverage. I think there is much more of it now, and it's more outlandish. And I think everybody has a job to do, including journalists and the publications and the news shows and whatever. And unfortunately, bad news gets a lot more attention than good news. And so that has escalated. And unfortunately, that has had very negative impact on public health because I could see it in the shop, just less and less people coming in to quit smoking because now they believe that vaping was as harmful or more harmful than smoking. So why try it? Where in the early days, people would walk in the door and go, "Hey, my buddy quit smoking with a vape," and they were ready, willing, and able.
It's amazing. I'm not certain about the exact stat right now currently in the US, but in the UK, I believe the number is 85% of current smokers in the UK believe that vaping is more harmful than smoking. Now, that can only happen because of malicious, intentional propaganda campaigns, could it not?
It quite often feels that way. And I get frustrated when I read a piece that's very negative and go, why didn't they talk to anybody from our side? And it's really easy to go down the trail of conspiracy theories, because it's happening over and over and over again. And some of them are getting called out for it. And I try now to always put myself in somebody else's shoes. So if I go to the American Lung Association for a quote, and they should be a trusted source of information on lung health, and I go look at their website, and on their website, they claim that if you switch to vaping, you didn't really quit smoking. Their website will tell you that vaping gives you popcorn lung. So even if I'm a journalist and I go scope them out, why would I not believe them? So how would I know there's another side to the story? So I watch certain groups trying to educate journalists. I've seen some better coverage lately, but not as much as I would like.
So there's a term that's used, and actually I was confused by it for the first few years when I started covering this issue. And the term is ANTZ, ANTZ. What does that mean?
Anti-nicotine and tobacco zealots, which you're limited in characters on Twitter, so it's easier to say ants.
This is amazing. It was posted in 2011 on the e-cigarette forum, and it's this poster named Kristen who was answering the question about what is the acronym ANTZ for, and of course, anti-nicotine tobacco zealot. She writes about them. They are complete tobacco and nicotine prohibitionists, not just anti-smoking. They deny and lie that low-risk forms of smokeless tobacco, such as snus and e-cigarettes, aren't up to 99% less hazardous than smoking. They insist that you haven't really quit smoking unless you have quit all forms of nicotine. They'd rather see smokers keep smoking until they get browbeaten into quitting, rather than see them continue to use a low-risk source of nicotine. They'd ban e-cigarettes just because they look like smoking. They follow the quit or die mantra. Essentially, they are so zealous in their hatred of tobacco and all forms of recreational nicotine that they actually put smokers at greater health risks by denying that there are safer forms of tobacco and nicotine. This is amazing, unbelievable. It was 14 years ago, and this poster had the ants nailed dead to rights.
I find it frustrating. I used to believe that every last one of them was willfully lying. And how dare they? I've watched so many of my family members and good friends die from smoking. And how dare they contribute to the death of good people like my grandpa? How dare they? And then I started getting opportunities to talk to some of them. And a lot of them believe what they're saying. They believe that we're the liars. So, what do you do? I could keep going on social media and I could keep calling them names, ants and Karens and big pharma shills and, influenced by Bloomberg dollars. And what am I going to accomplish when I do that? I'm going to get a whole mess of the Vape family to like my tweets. They're going to share my tweets. They're going to pat me on the back. And I'm going to look to them like I'm some kind of hero. And meanwhile, people like my grandpa keep dying because those people that believe different than me have a stronger voice than I do. And I got to thinking, if I go on social media and I think somebody's wrong, and the first thing I do is call them an ants, is that opening their heart to talk to me? Or is that making them defensive and closing their mind? And I'm nothing but an angry troll and I'm not worth listening to. That's why I quit using language like that, because I want people to listen to me. And they're not gonna if I make them angry and defensive first.
So let's jump into the issue. And I mentioned that you're a writer. I want to call our viewers' attention to this great piece you wrote in Filter, published in May of 2024, titled "In the Ugly Nicotine Debate, Being Kind Isn't Just Right, It's Effective." In your article, you describe how the nicotine debate has turned into an us versus them war. So, how did that happen? Because it is there. And how does it hurt the fight for tobacco harm reduction if you do get, a bit punchy?
Again, I got to stop and think about what my goal is. Because for a long time, I acted like a lot of other people do. And I had to stop and think, why is everybody fighting? What is the backstory? I think I'm right. They think they're right. And we're all tossing names like we're in kindergarten fighting in the playground. They're not changing my mind. I'm not changing theirs. What's behind this? I'm afraid that all these products are going to get banned and people are going to continue to die. I'm afraid they're going to get banned and people like me who continue using these products so I don't go back to smoking aren't going to have that option. If I'm that afraid, what are they afraid of? A lot of them are afraid of being duped by big tobacco because they were duped in the past. And that is a legitimate fear. And a lot of them think of being addicted to something that has the same meaning to them no matter what the addiction is. And we've all heard smoking or nicotine is as addictive as heroin. And so in their minds, if a 16-year-old is addicted to nicotine, it's like they're using heroin. But to some people, the word addiction is just this evil thing. It's evil. And to some of them, just the loss of autonomy, the not getting up and having a choice whether or not you're going to do something is bad enough to them that it should not be happening to people. I'm trying to understand where they're coming from because that's going to help me determine how I'm going to communicate with them. And I want bridge building and communicating, not mudslinging and fighting. A lot of these people are on their holy mission to save the world without actually ever talking to the people they're trying to save. So they don't know what it's like or what we want or what we need.
So you write in your article that you were pretty hard-nosed, hard-headed, you know, person out there fighting the good fight, hammering away. So what was that like and what changed your mind?
I was a jerk. It's actually embarrassing to admit I was a jerk because I am a very nice, caring, compassionate person. But when I first got into advocacy, the advocates I met became my tribe, and that's how they were trying to make sure these products don't get banned. And so I learned from them. And for years, Brent, I didn't question it. I was fighting the fight, I was putting in my time. And then one day I realized I can't name one person whose mind I changed. I can count off more cities that we lost the fight than we won. And I went, this isn't working. What do we do? You know, and then I met Joe Gitchell on Twitter, and he does this hashtag make new mistakes. And I went, well, duh. If it's not working, why are we doing the same thing over and over again? And I just flat out made it my mission to break out of my bubble and stop preaching to the choir because they already know what I want them to know. And that's why I changed I guess you call it a strategy. I don't know, how I approach this problem. I want to talk to people who are on the fence first because they're the easiest ones, and then branch out from there.
And you are using the hashtag Be Kind actually as a visible moniker on your Twitter. You've got a Substack too as well, Skip's Corner, .substack.com and so forth. So I guess there's two questions. One, first, how is the Vape family reacting to this message? Because of course, it's obviously a message to them and to kind of change their behavior. And then with this new kind of communication strategy, have you had any success with working with those on the fence or maybe changing some minds?
Yes and yes. I get some pushback from people who vape once in a while, but I also get the most wonderful messages. Hey, Skip, I interacted with so-and-so, and they actually responded to me, and I did like you told me, and I tried to be kind. And that's like a proud mom moment. I don't know. But the best part is reaching out to people. In the last couple years, Representative Allison Tant from Florida, we watched a video of her testifying, and she talked about popcorn lung, and it was not pretty. And the Vape fam jumped her and told her where the sun rises and sets, and I responded kindly. And she tweeted the nicest message that more people should advocate like I do, because that's what got her to stop and listen. And she has since then, and I'm not even her constituent. She invited me to call her. We had a wonderful conversation on the telephone. She asked really good questions about vaping. She gave me the opportunity to bust a lot of myths, including popcorn lung. And since then, she has met several times with consumers and vape shop owners in Florida, which is where she's from. So you can move the needle. I testified at a city council meeting a few years ago, and a woman from she was a volunteer from one of the health groups, I don't remember anymore, heart, lung cancer, and her testimony was awful. Oh, I mean, you could just hear the people who they groaning in the audience. And I tossed my testimony out the window. And when I got up, I had 2 minutes to try to debunk everything she said. And afterwards, we were all standing outside on the sidewalk vaping, and she was not happy with me. And we ended up agreeing to go out for coffee. And I flat out asked her, why did you tell those lies? And she said, those aren't lies. She had pamphlets of printed materials from several different places, all validating what she said. And the reason she was doing what she was doing is because she watched her husband die from lung cancer. He smoked, and it became her mission in life to never see another wife bury the love of her life because he died from smoking. Isn't that what I'm doing? I'm trying to keep moms from crying over their sons and granddaughters from crying over their grandfathers. Her and I want the same thing, but she was super focused on if they don't start, it won't happen. So she was focused on youth. I'm focused on older people. And by the time we finished our cup of coffee, she did realize that there are a lot of people that can't quit smoking and they need an alternative. And we both agree that kids shouldn't start. That's not a point of contention. So you can make a difference if you give people a chance to talk to you instead of fighting with you.
Skip, let's put your hashtag Be Kind strategy to the test. I'm sure you're familiar with this absolutely grotesque example of shoddy research and media fear-mongering that made headlines last month. A so-called bombshell study led by Dr. Maxine Boyden at Manchester Metropolitan University claimed that vaping is just as dangerous as smoking, linking it to dementia, heart disease, and organ failure. The problem? Well, the study wasn't even published or peer-reviewed, yet major UK tabloids like The Mirror ran with it as fact. So let me ask you, when you take a look at this, it's full on fear-mongering. What was your reaction to the story, and how do you apply #BeKind to that researcher and the mainstream media publishing this garbage?
When I first saw that, I was upset. I practiced my vocabulary of not nice words. One, I look at the source, The Mirror, which is, I think it was The Mirror, is not a reliable source of information. That's clickbait, gossip, tabloid garbage. I did a lot of research, like 3 days worth, into this researcher and the university he's from. I made a separate entry on my blog. I think it's called The Study That Isn't. Because to me, my first reaction is, this is really unethical. Why would you be giving out all this information before you've even completed the study?
It's completely irresponsible.
It feels that way to me. It absolutely feels that way to me. So now what do we do about it? Because it's out there and it's spread like a wildfire. I made a whole long list of different publications that whatever shared his information. I'm at a loss for words because this fires me up. On the other hand, what do we do? Should we share all those links and all that misinformation because we're outraged? So should I go on Twitter, make my comment and include a link to the article? Or, like in my blog, is a whole list of experts who responded how irresponsible that was. I want to end death by smoking. So whose voice deserves to be amplified? The kindest thing to do for those people who smoke is to amplify the voices of the people who are saying, this is not ethical, this is not science, this isn't how you do things, instead of amplifying the voices of the people that printed what to me is garbage.
Well, sure. But let's just say, instead of amplifying their voices, I am an active vaping advocate who wants to inflict pain on the researcher and to make sure that, that he's chased for doing this. So, I mean, I get it. I get the be kind part, but is it effective in a situation like this?
Okay. So what is my goal? When I see stuff like that, oh yeah, it would be so nice to just take a verbal version of a 2x4 and whack the guy with it. What will change if I do that? I saw a tweet by the reporter from that original article, and it's in my list in the blog, but he commented something about somebody warned him about the people on the internet and community notes, and yeah, there must be a lot of money involved. So right off the bat, he was assuming that we deserve to be discredited, not the scientists. Ew, yes.
Yeah.
Very frustrating. I think people like Clive Bates did the right thing. He wrote a letter and expressed his concerns and why they're a concern to the researcher and to the university that the researcher is from. And I think that is a better route than trying to just smash somebody into the dirt. And that's what would feel good and would make everybody in my tribe feel good, is to just attack the guy. But will that keep him from doing this again? Probably not. This already happened. So how do we mitigate the damage and prevent it happening in the future?
Skip, I know you're passionate about consumer involvement with the THR cause, and as you know, consumers are at the heart of the upcoming 12th edition of the Global Forum on Nicotine, the annual conference on safer nicotine products, which takes place again this year in Warsaw, Poland, from June 19 to 21, 2025. The conference theme is Challenging Perceptions. Now, in your mind, what are some of the solutions to address the misunderstandings, misconceptions, and mischaracterizations that are holding back progress for safer nicotine products?
Use your voice kindly. I think there's a difference between being a bully and being a critic. And if you approach people with curiosity, you can initiate a conversation. And I think we have to make sure we never stop using our voices. Consumer voices are not heard enough, and we need to push to be heard.
What do you think of the GFN conference?
It's amazing. I watch it virtually every year, and it's on my bucket list to go in person some year. I really appreciate the effort they put towards joining experts and consumers in the same room and giving everybody a voice.
So, final question for you, Skip. What's next for Skip Murray?
I'm going to do what I'm doing until we've saved vaping or I die, whichever comes first.